Locked On Podcast Network and State Farm present Paving the Way, a new series highlighting important voices across Locked On's network. Every month, our host Kanani Stevens will showcase other Locked On hosts who come from underserved communities to hear the challenges they face to become a sports broadcast personality. Who will be paving the way this episode? Find out now.
State Farm believes it's important to champion diverse voices and create positive impacts in our neighborhoods. That's why our good neighbors at State Farm are proud to support the Paving the Way series and their mission to provide support to underserved communities. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. In today's episode, we speak to Ku Khahil from Locked On Pistons about his humble beginnings on YouTube and how his Locked On community supported him when he needed it the most. Ku from Locked On Pistons joining us for this edition of Paving the Way. Happy to have you. We try to start these out with a little bit of background, just kind of how you grew up and how were sports part of your life from the get-go.
Sports have always been like the biggest part of my life, to be honest. Basketball was like my first love. I've played basketball my whole life. It's been like my number one my whole life since I was a kid. Obviously I had like the crazy dream of wanting to go play NBA, but didn't grow past 5'9" after my initial growth spurt. So that never ended up happening, but eventually found another way to get into the basketball business. But not just basketball. I played football my whole life too. So sports have been like the main thing for me, literally since I was around like 7-8 years old. It's been like the main thing for me.
Do you feel like, with your job now, it's just so much easier when you love what you're talking about? I'm sure you followed the Pistons since you were a kid. Was that your team growing up?
Yeah, I was born in Detroit. So, the Pistons, the Lions, they've been my teams. I'm very loyal to the city. I'm not going to be one of those who go to a fan of a different city. I'm very loyal to Detroit. So, yeah, Pistons were my team growing up.
Did you know you wanted to kind of cover sports? I know you always played and you thought that for a while, but like when did you realize, hey, I still want to be involved in some way and I feel like this might work for me?
I'd say probably my senior year of high school. I joined my high school's newspaper at Chippewa Valley. I joined their newspaper class. I don't know how long I'm pretty sure the newspaper had they just brought it to the high school. And so I joined it and I wrote a few articles and I was like, I like this. Writing was always something I was pretty cool at and pretty good at. A fun thing I always hold over my friends is I had the highest, like back when I don't think they do ACT anymore, but like I had the highest score in the writing of all my friends. So I always hold that over their heads, but that's a little fun thing. But yeah, in my senior year, when I realized like I wasn't going to be going to the NBA or any like crazy college for real, I decided like, I don't want to go and do some, labor job. Like I want to be in sports. Sports is like my thing. I love basketball. If I can't play it, I want to be doing it somehow. So I joined the newspaper class and I started writing articles there. That's really, and also around that time, that was when like, ESPN First Take was really like starting to take off. And I was one of those kids at the lunch table every day with my friends. We were screaming at each other, nonstop debating, yelling at each other. It was just crazy stuff. So like First Take was always something like, especially around that time, I was like, man, I think I really would love to do something like that when I just get to talk about sports, argue about sports, and just talk about basketball. That would be like, if I can't play it, that would be like my next big thing.
It's easy to argue about when you're passionate about it. I wouldn't even call it that. It's just like you have thoughts, you got to share them. Stephen A must have been big for you then. What was it about him that you kind of either related to or just drew you to him?
It's just because he was it's because First Take was really popping off at that time. And Stephen A, I always thought was like the most cool one as a kid. Now as I've gotten older, I've found some other people I maybe relate to a little bit more. But definitely like growing up as a kid throughout high school, Stephen A was like the first guy, and really like the guy I looked up to and like that kind of basketball media thing. It was really fun watching First Take all the time, especially like the times when you wouldn't go to school and you got to actually watch it live. It was always just so much fun watching them debate and get loud and funny and stuff. So I really loved it. There was no other real show I don't feel like that was on like that at that point. I know there's a few now, But I feel like First Take was probably like the only one around at that point. I didn't really like Skip Bayless, and I still don't really like Skip. But yeah, Stephen A was my guy. So that was the dude I really looked at when it came to like this basketball media stuff and what I wanted to do.
I feel like Stephen A, love him or hate him, everybody has an opinion, right? It's like you feel strongly about this man because he's very specific kind of way. When with your not necessarily emulating him, but do you just try to be like yourself when you're talking about the team? I think sometimes that's hard for people to kind of be in the public eye or talk about something, but like bring your own personality into it. Is that key for you when you're talking about the Pistons?
Yeah, you said it. You said exactly what I was going to say. It's the personality thing. I remember when I was in high school, I watched like I don't remember what exactly it was, but it was an interview with Stephen A. And he was talking. They were asking him like, "How did you get where you got?" Or "How are you doing so well?" Like all this stuff. I remember watching it, and one of the big things I always took away from like when I was in high school was watching Stephen A. is that's what really like brought everyone to him was his personality. Like that's still what brings people to him is that he's you know, for what it's worth, he's loud. He's very passionate. His personality is instantly identifiable. People find it fun to listen to. And that's really what I've tried to do since graduating high school. I created my own stuff, tried doing my own thing until I basically got on some places. But like, I've always wanted to make sure that I showed my personality and really, cause I feel like I have a fun personality. I feel like I'm a fun guy. Shout out to Kawhi. But I feel like I'm pretty funny and stuff. So like, that's been like the one thing I want to make sure, like, yes, I'm very passionate about the Pistons and the basketball. I feel like I'm pretty smart about the game. I love doing breakdowns, video breakdowns, and, you know, getting really into the weeds of basketball. But a lot of people probably can do that. It's about like, do people want to listen to you? Do people really want to like, you know, hear you talk about it? And a part of that, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand, is that you have to have the personality. You have to be fun with it too. And that was probably one of like the biggest takeaways I've taken from Stephen A. in high school was that, like you said, whether you hate or love him, his personality is vibrant. It pops off the screen instantly, and that's why he's at where he's at, and that's why I'm trying to get where I'm trying to go.
Cool. I think your personality really shines through, especially when you're covering a team that, you know, hasn't been doing great for a little bit. And obviously, you know, people say what they say about it and you're honest, but you can tell you still want the team to do well, but you're not going to sugarcoat what's actually going on. And I always appreciate that. I'm sure your viewers do too. Is that kind of key for you? It's like, hey, I love this team more than anybody. I want them to be successful, and I'm not going to like blow smoke with you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of my listeners may feel like I need to be a little bit nicer to them sometimes, and I need to be a little bit nicer to the Pistons. But yeah, I mean, I love the Pistons. I grew up watching them my whole life. They've been my favorite team since I was a kid. I want them to be good. I want them to have success. But yeah, part of like doing this job and part of being in media and covering the team, you got to be honest about things. You can't sugarcoat stuff, and you shouldn't sugarcoat stuff. So if something's wrong or they're not doing things well, and obviously they haven't been, it's been like 15 years since they won a playoff game, you got to be honest about it. And I feel like I'm one of the ones in the Pistons market that is will be very honest about things and not sugarcoat anything.
Very good. We know you like to write before. How did you end up with Locked On? What were you doing before you figured that out? So
when I graduated high school in 2016, I decided I wanted to go to Wayne State, and I went to Wayne State for sports broadcast journalism. And right in that summer after graduating high school, I created my own YouTube page, Ku's Ballroom, and I created a blog with it too. It's a Ku's Ballroom too. And I would just go on there. I'd write articles about the Lions, about the Pistons. And on my YouTube channel, I did Piston stuff. I did Lion stuff. I just tried to get out there and try to create some kind of base and just get work out there and show that like I was trying to do stuff. And if it popped off, it popped off. But if not, it was more so just to create like not only to create like a little bit of a resume for myself, but to learn things. There's so much stuff I learned just from, you know, doing YouTube and my own blog, that like trial and error, just figuring out new stuff to do that really helps me now. Especially with like, you know, just talking to a camera and editing videos and editing podcasts, and, you know, knowing how to show your personality in front of a camera when it's just you and a camera talking, or you're talking, but you're talking just to a camera. So that's what I did right out of high school. I spent 2 years doing that. And then in 2017 or 18, I was found by a small Pistons blog, still around now. It's Palace of Pistons. And I wrote there. And then I got on with Piston Power to Fansided. I wrote there. And then eventually I got to becoming their site expert and editor there. I took that and ended up working with WJR in 2019, 2020, and got credentialed that year. So I was in the locker rooms. Unfortunately, that was the COVID year, and we had the year cut in half. So I didn't get to have the whole season there. A fun thing was the final game I got to be there in the locker room was the game against Rudy Gobert before everything blew up. So that was a little bit of a scary moment. Yeah, so I got to be credentialed that year. Super fun, really great experience. And then after that, I wrote at DBB, Detroit Bad Boys, for the SB Nation. And I was still doing YouTube all along during this as well. All throughout this time, I was doing YouTube. And then, yeah, Locked On Pistons job became available. I had a few guys, a few listeners of my YouTube, and another podcast I used to guest on. A few people reached out to me. It was like, hey, Locked On Pistons is available. I think you'd be a great host for it. And then the former host, Matt messaged me and was like, hey, I'm leaving. I had a few people recommend you. Would this be something that you'd like to do? And I was like, yeah, I think it sounds pretty dope. And then Nick ended up reaching out to me, interviewed me. And yeah, that's how he ended up going and looking at my YouTube videos. I remember back in when it was called, I think it's called Spotify Green Room now. It was called Locker Room at that point. I remember he was spying on me in like a locker room, a few of my locker rooms that I would host, and just like listening to see how I communicated with people and stuff. But yeah, that's how I ended up getting on it Locked On.
You talk a little bit about your YouTube page too, because when you're doing podcasting and you don't have a co-host, you're literally talking to yourself and for half an hour every day. And that is very difficult to do. It's difficult to show your personality, and it's difficult to find stuff to talk about every day that people want to listen to, right? Did you struggle at first when it was pod every single, 5 days a week, or did you kind of get your groove right away? Or how did you feel when you first started?
I'm a lot better now than I was when I started. I'll say that. I'm a lot better. I feel a lot more confident, a lot more comfortable. I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I was just very nervous and just scared about what I was doing when I first joined. Now I love it so much. I just come in, sit down, pop the record button on, just get going. But when I first started, I remember the first episode I recorded, I was so scared about reading ads that I was sweating so bad the first day. I was like, oh my God, dude, I'm so scared about this. I'm so nervous. And it just felt like the whole room just got so much hotter when I started recording. I was so nervous about it. But yeah, that was when I first started. I definitely I was really nervous. But I've gotten a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident in it. It took us some time to get used to, but again, me being on YouTube and doing my own YouTube for a while definitely kind of like made the transition when Locked On eventually moved to YouTube. It made it a little bit more seamless for me because I had been doing YouTube for a while. So I wasn't too scared. I wasn't too worried about being on camera and doing video content. I had been doing video content for a few years at that point. But I think the biggest thing for me was with the podcast is when I record, I try to go start to finish. I don't want to have too many edits where I'm stopping myself and going back, stopping and trying. I wanted to feel real, like a real conversation happening. Like we're in a barbershop and I'm talking to my listeners. And that was probably like the biggest adjustment to me, is that I want to make sure I'm saying everything right. I'm not going back on my word. I'm not like messing up what I'm trying to say. Like that was the biggest adjustment for me, because when you do videos, you can stop, edit, go back and stuff, whatever. So yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me. But yeah, it was a little bit of adjustment at first.
Did you just kind of grow to like almost deal with what you were saying? Because I feel like sometimes I'm trying to say a sentence and I'm like, all right, that ain't right, and I'm like rewording it as I'm saying it, because I think people appreciate that too. At least in my experience, it's a little more relatable.
That's the exact word I was going to say. Relatable. Like everyone messes up. Everyone says the wrong word sometimes. Everyone stutters sometimes when they're trying to say something. I'll make fun of myself on the podcast. Like if I believe a few days ago, I said the wrong word. I was trying to say translatable and I said something else. And I just spent like 10 seconds making fun of myself for not being able to get the word out. So I think, like you said, I think it's relatable. I think listeners like to hear that. Not too much, obviously. They don't want to hear you just struggling to get through a podcast, but if you make fun of yourself, you poke fun of yourself, you can't have fun. You can't make fun of other things. You can't have fun if you can't make fun of yourself as well. So I agree. I think I just go through, and if I mess up, I mess up, and I'll make fun of myself and just keep it going.
One of the things I really liked about Locked On when I got here is like they want you to be yourself. We talked about that, right? Like being able to do that. Not everywhere is like that. Like they kind of just, some places are like, all right, just do the story. They don't want you to get too crazy with stuff. But I feel like everything we Locked On, I mean, for the most part, they're pretty on board with. And if you want to try something new, have you felt like really supported and kind of just like go for it with everyone that you work with?
Yeah, I think Locked On has been absolutely amazing to me. I love everyone I've worked with. All the projects that we've tried over the last few years, everything that I've been a part of. I think it's just a great community of coworkers, of my colleagues. I think everyone's been so supportive. I honestly think it's like the best place I've ever been. And I haven't been at like 20 different places. Not like I've been at, these big places all over the place and everything, but the amount of support and just togetherness that Locked On has with everyone, it's super dope. It's one of the, like, probably some of the best things about it is that everyone wants to see each other succeed. And yeah, like Nick has been, Nick has been the NBA channel manager for a minute, and he's supported so much what I do. Anytime I have a question, he's immediately there to help me out. He's helped me out get equipment that maybe I didn't have beforehand. He's helped me out with content ideas. He's helped me out when I'm struggling to get something going on the podcast, if I'm running out of ideas. And the biggest thing he's done for me is that sometimes he feels like I'm not showing my personality enough. He feels like sometimes I'm being too quiet, I guess is the best word. He always tells me, hey, show your personality more, be more fun, like go out there. You're leaning or holding back a little bit too much. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm holding back too much, but I mean, it's just like, that's the kind of thing, like they don't want you, Locked On doesn't want you to hold back anything. They don't want you to hide who you are. If anything, they want you to be exactly who you are on the camera, on the mic. And I think that's great, because not every place is like that.
It's not everywhere. I can tell you, I've worked a lot of other places and it's definitely not like that. It's pretty rare. So it's a good thing we got going. Do you have advice like for anyone that kind of thinks they want to get into this because they're like, oh, that looks kind of cool? Because as we've just discussed, it's not the easiest thing in the world. But what's your advice to someone that hasn't really tried it yet, but wants to get into sports media?
It's a cliche, but for real, it's just do it. Like the biggest thing for me at the beginning, when I first graduated high school, and I knew this is what I wanted to do, the thing that was holding me back for a few weeks and made me like scared to do it was, will people make fun of me? And me and my friends, I feel like a lot of friends do this, a lot of friend groups, you just make fun of each other. You constantly are poking fun at each other. Like you just do that. But I was worried, when my friends going to make fun of me, or people I just graduated high school with, are they going to be making fun of, oh, look at him, he's trying to do this, like, haha, blah, blah. He's only getting this many views. But like, that was the big thing for me. I was just scared about what people would think. And I think that's the biggest thing. I've talked to a few people. I've tried to help a few people out. And that's like one of the first things I always hear is that they're scared to just get it going, just to get it started. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just go out and do it. Who cares what anyone thinks? Who cares what anyone says? Who cares how many people watch or read whatever you're going to do? Just go out and do it. And eventually, if you care enough about it and you work hard enough with it, you stay consistent with it, eventually you'll get there. I mean, we're in 2023. I didn't get Locked On job until 2021. I started like really doing things in 2016. And I feel like I was the youngest person at Locked On. Nick told me, at least, when they hired me. So like, it's not like it's super, it doesn't happen all the time when you're this young and you get somewhere. It takes time. So just stay consistent with it. And if you love what you're doing, definitely stay consistent with it and just work hard. And whether you're getting 10, 20, 30, 40, hundreds, thousands of views, whatever, and no matter what friends are poking fun at you or whatever, former classmates, whatever, who cares? Just go out there and do what you got to do, and you'll eventually get where you want to go.
Yeah, listen to some criticism, be open to criticism, but don't get too deep into the comments, because that's never good for anyone.
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
I don't know. Is there anything else that you're really looking forward to with your podcast? Is it just, the team turning things around? I mean, you've been there for some dark times, so I don't want to jinx anything, but things look bright ahead. Is it exciting to kind of develop the show as the team gets better?
It definitely, like, when good things happen with the team, it makes recording a lot more fun. When the team is doing well, it makes it a lot more fun. When it's more positivity around the team, it makes it a lot more fun. Just recently, we had Cade Cunningham really turn some heads at the USA camp on the select team. Had Steve Kerr shouting him out, had players shouting him out, and he was getting a lot of coverage. And I was able to have Ben Galver on the podcast, and it was one of my best podcasts of this summer. And everyone was loving listening to it. It had some of the best numbers this past summer. And I had a lot of fun recording it just because it's some positive going on with the team. And with Cade being so young and coming back for his third season, adding Asar Thompson, having other young guys with the team, Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey. This is the one time I feel like in the last decade, the Pistons actually have a young core instead of trying to fight for like mediocrity. They have a young core to build towards the future. And it makes it more of a fun. It makes it more fun to talk about. To constantly, it's more of like the unknown beforehand. Like you knew what the Pistons were going to be. You knew they weren't going to be that good. Now there's just so much unknown. You can talk about whatever. Like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if Cade by 23 becomes this? What if Jalen Duren by 22 becomes like? There's so much unknown with the team, and it's not like bad unknown. It's like positive unknowns. That, yeah, it does make it more fun to talk about the team right now, I feel like, than any other point outside of maybe the end of Cade's rookie year when he was really going crazy. But outside of that, I think this summer so far has been probably the most fun I've had recording the podcast thus far because of where the team's at and where they're going.
Could we talk a little bit about, this is a daily podcast, right? So that's difficult to come up with content every day, but it's also difficult if you have stuff going on in your life because you still need to do a podcast 5 days a week. So, that's the normal of how we do things. How do you deal with things that come up in your life? So,
yeah, actually recently, 2.5 months ago now, my wife had brain surgery. She had to remove like a non-cancerous tumor. It was very scary going through that. And it made it tough to want to talk about the Pistons. It just wasn't important at that point. I just wanted to be there with my wife and see everything through. And at that time, I was trying to stay with the 5 days a week. But when you're a content creator, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. You got to make sure that you're doing what's right in your life. And especially when you're going through something like that, you want to make sure you're taking care of your own mental health. So I did I talked with, my channel manager with Locked On NBA, Nick, and told him, look, I got some stuff going on. I'm going to need to, I need to take like a week off. I like a week, 2 weeks off here because I need to be here with my wife. So I think the main thing is that if a lot of times when I talk to content creators, they feel like they owe, and we do, but like you owe your listeners, like, I got to get this out. And if you don't do it, you feel like you're letting your listeners down. But if you're going through something that serious in your life and it's really affecting you, you're letting yourself down if you just force yourself through it too. So my advice would be make sure you're constantly taking care of your own health and especially your mental health when you got things going on. And then the content's always going to be there too.
Were you surprised at all by the response from, Locked On, but not only that, your listeners as well, because I don't think they could have been any more supportive to you in a time when you needed it the most.
Yeah, I mean, I truly don't believe, and I'm not like exaggerating here for the show. I'm being completely serious. I don't know how me and my wife would have got through this at all if not for Locked On. First of all, Nick and the entire Locked On community was very supportive of me, and I had multiple hosts from Locked On NBA, Locked On NFL, Locked On NHL. I have multiple people reaching out and letting me know we're thinking about you, we're praying for you, we're praying for your wife. So that was it, feeling that kind of community and support. That was very big too. Obviously, Nick allowing me to take a week and 2 weeks off. David Locke messaging me and being like, "Hey, I heard about your wife. Take as much time as you need. We'll always be here when you come back." That was huge because I really was stressing a lot about, look, I know I need to get this content out, but I just don't feel it at all. I just don't have motivation right now to do it. I'm too worried about other things, more pressing things. So Locked On itself was very supportive, but my mom made a GoFundMe. My mom made a GoFundMe because I wasn't going to be able to work. I had to take care of my wife, and my wife obviously wasn't going to be able to work.
Yeah.
So we were worried about how we're going to pay bills, how are we going to pay her hospital bills, how are we going to pay for food, how are we going to pay for all that stuff while she's out of commission and while I was having to take care of her. And my mom made a GoFundMe, and I tweeted it out. I didn't want to tweet it out. I don't like asking for I don't like asking for handouts. I don't like I just don't like doing it. So my mom forced me to do it. Yes, I'm 25. My mom still makes me do
Moms come through though. Moms know best, I swear.
So I tweeted it out, and without the community I've made with Locked On Pistons, the amount of people who support the podcast and listen every single day, not just on YouTube or all the podcast platforms, but have followed me on Twitter and interact with me nonstop. Everyone donated $14,000 in total. And I'm not joking. I don't know how, after seeing how much her hospital bills were and how much our bills really were, like when you're not working and the bills start coming through, you really start to see how much you really spend on bills. And it's like, I don't know how we would have survived, really, for real. I don't know how we would have survived these last few months without the support of all my listeners, my co-hosts, my colleagues, and not even just listeners, but listeners who were retweeting and sharing it with their friends and family, who then shared it with their friends and family, and all around the big support that we got. It was just crazy. And yeah, I appreciate Locked On way more. Like, I appreciate it before, but like now I appreciate it way more, even more than I did before, because of how much Locked On really helped me and my family in a really big time of need. So I really do appreciate and love Locked On because of that.
You hit the nail on the head too when you talk about, like, you know, taking care of yourself, taking care of yours, because you can't be giving out time and not taking care of yourself as well. Do you feel like, you know, having that support, taking that time, and then, you know, now being able to come back and where your wife is at now, do you feel, you know, you can give more back now that you took that time?
Yeah, absolutely. It helped a ton being able to take a week and a half. I think I took a week and a half off. It helped a ton taking a week and a half off, because I was able to just focus on getting my wife home, because she had to spend a few days in the hospital. I had to spend a few days with her throughout the day. I wasn't able to stay the night, but I stayed all day with her at the hospital. So I was getting home tired and stuff. So I didn't have to have the stresses of like, okay, now I got to get home. I got to get this done. I was able to just focus on her and us. So that helped remove a lot of stress at that point. And then obviously when I was able to bring her home and know that she's okay, she's got through the surgery and now it's just her recovery, I feel a lot more capable, and my interest in the Pistons again came back, and my interest in wanting to create content and wanting to get that stuff out came back. So yeah, the support and being able to take the time off, and knowing, again, not just the time off, but knowing that, like, hey, we don't have to stress about bills either. We don't have to stress about how we're going to eat and get food and stuff, because so many people reached out and donated, whether it's $1, $5, $10, whatever it was. So many people donated where now we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It made like these last 2.5 months, so much easier on her, so much easier on me, and so much easier on the podcast. And not just me recording the podcast, but made the quality of the podcast what I want the quality to be. It's not me forcing myself to get on here and record because I have to. It's me wanting to get on here and record. And I feel like we're having our best summer. I feel like I'm having my best summer so far with Locked On Pistons. We're having some really cool guests. We're really seeing the numbers shoot through the roof. We're on our way to 10,000 subscribers. We just got through 6,000. So I really do feel like we're blowing up a little bit. And a lot of that, again, just goes back to the support I got from Locked On and all my community.
Before we end the show, we want to highlight an organization that we're working with in an effort to support paving the way for future generations faced with less favorable opportunities. State Farm and Locked On will be giving a donation to the incredible organization Everyone On for every host we feature on this series, including Ku today. The mission of Everyone On is to unlock opportunity by connecting families in underserved communities to affordable internet services and digital literacy training. Doing so creates significant positive change in communities and society as a whole. A big thank you to our good neighbors at State Farm for their support on behalf of our hosts and helping pave the way for so many others in our communities. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. State Farm and Locked On Network share a common goal, helping to make our communities a better place. State Farm is committed to helping amplify individuals and organizations that lead the way in diversity, inclusion, and social good. Because we know that investing in community building, uplifting diverse voices is crucial to creating a sense of belonging. State Farm is proud to sponsor the Paving the Way series and celebrate the changemakers that have paved the way in making our neighborhoods a better place for everyone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.